Scoring in marketing automation is used to measure engagement, and that's no different in Marketo. Digital engagement can be anything from clicking an email, visiting a page, filling out a form, or posting on social media. The reason we assign a score to this, which is a numeric representation of how engaged a particular lead is to be able to compare different leads to see who are the hottest leads, or who are the people the most likely to purchase, the most likely to perform some kind of action in a B2C or a B2B context. But in Marketo, scoring can also be used as a counter, an arbitrary counter that can be used for other things. However, in this particular basic scoring, we're just going to go through the mechanics of manipulating scores in Marketo. The first thing to understand about scoring in Marketo is that a particular lead has a lead score. You can have multiple lead scores on a particular lead. So for example, you might have a lead score around your product interest. You could have a lead score around your propensity for buying. But by default, Marketo has a single lead score. So if we go to any particular lead, let's pick one, what you'll see is this score here. So this score is the primary lead source in Marketo. However, you can have multiple scores and you can even make your own scores as an admin. But what we're going to cover primarily in this section is how to manipulate those scores from within a campaign. So let's go back to marketing activities, go back to your training folder. We're going to create a new program called My First Scoring. Now the program type will be default. If you're creating a campaign which is only for scoring, it's best to use the operational channel. The operational channel is for back-end functions. So a scoring program is not necessarily just for marketing. It could just be for back-end scoring. So in that case, you can use the operational. Otherwise, you can just use scoring flow steps in any campaign in Marketo. Now scoring is manipulated within a campaign, so let's create a smart campaign and let's call it adjust score and click create. So in this adjust score, the smart list could be whatever we want. So for example, perhaps it's on lead creation. So if a lead is created from, let's say, a particular form, we might assign a score to it just because it comes from that particular form. So the flow step that's used is the one that's called change score, which is different from change data value. You cannot change scores using the change data value. You need to use the change score. So let's click there. Now you'll notice in the drop down, it will give you whatever scores you've created. So medic score is not a default. That's one I've created in this instance. Now in lead score, to simply change it, you can do it a variety of ways. And there's some examples here. If we simply wanted to increment the score by 1, we could just use +1. If we wanted to increment it by 5 points, we could use +5. So scoring is completely dependent on the scoring model that you've set up. When I say scoring model, it's whatever scoring makes sense to your particular business and your particular instance. So no one can tell you whether you should be +1 or +5. That's something that needs to be done when an instance is created, and it will be based on which business you work for. If we want to set it to a particular number, we can use the equals. So if we wanted to just set it to 6 regardless, we could use =6. If we wanted to reset it to 0, we could use =0. And everything I said about the plus can be used as a minus. So if we wanted to drop the score, we can also do that using a minus. Dropping scores is very interesting because what that allows you to do is adjust the lead scoring. So over time, you might what we call decay a score. So let's say you reach a particularly high score because you're a very active lead. However, then you are inactive for 2 months. You shouldn't stay at a score of, for example, 500 just because you reached that 2 months ago. Over time, your score should be decayed. So we might -10 for every week that you haven't actually been active on the site or you haven't done something. So in the smart lists, the not filters are very useful for those kinds of things. So if we have a look at, for example, not clicked a link in an email, we could have, so if you haven't clicked any email in the last 30 days, for example, that could be a filter, or similarly, we could use a trigger for that as well, but usually it's a filter. The not filters are only filters and not triggers. And that allows us to decay scores. So negative scores are very important as well. And that's the basics of using lead scoring. It's done via using the change score flow step, and the not filters are very useful for decaying scores.